given that the courts and the conditions in Egypt were quite slow and that smashing wasn't really the way to go about things, that I think benefited him, and I think he read the kind of game style and the way they had to play perfectly. So, I mean, all in all, I think they just worked very well in sync, and that's probably what led them to the win. What I would say is I do now struggle to think whether Yanguas has that many other better options beyond Stupa. I think the only real option that would improve, well, that he would probably say, yes, he's a better partner, is Galan.
Yanguas is definitely right now, as a right-sided player, I guess one of the most, or will be one of the most kind of sought after assets, like players. I mean, he's got an unbelievable potential. He's already got also like quite a decent amount of points. Like he's very well established in the ranking.
I think Coki and Nieto is in a bit of a pickle individually. I don't think he has that many top options. Potentially, we might see him move into the forehand side. I mean, he's alluded to it in some interviews, the fact that he said he might want to try it.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Padel Pod, your weekly podcast covering professional padel presented by Hugo and Gons. We're on to episode 72, and as always, joined by my co-host here today, Hugo. It's great to have you on. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks, Gons. I mean, I felt better. For our listeners who obviously don't know this, we had a bit of a big night last night. After El Clasico, we met up with our kind of group of friends, mates. And yeah, even though the result clearly didn't go the way we wanted it to go, obviously Gons and I are big Real Madrid fans, still think it's a long season ahead. And the last time we lost 4-0, which was 2 years ago, we ended up winning the league and Champions League. So I think people are getting a bit too catastrophic. But yeah, we ended up going out and now feeling the effects of it, right?
Yeah, exactly. I guess we had to go out to, how would you say it?
Drown our sorrows.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Drown our sorrows. But yeah, I mean, when we have a tournament tonight, hopefully it won't affect us that much. I mean, we have to rest up, maybe a little of the Spanish siesta will do the work.
Definitely. And I'm sure we're going to be very up for tonight's match. Yeah, I can't wait. So very much looking forward to it. I'm very much looking forward to this episode because we had quite a refreshing week, didn't we? With quite a different Premier Padel tournament. Obviously, it was NewGiza's Premier Padel P2. And 4 out of the 5 top seeds in the men's ranking weren't playing. So the only pair that was playing within the top 5 seeds was Franco Stupaczuk and Mike Yanguas, who are currently ranked 4th, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, I mean, great week. I really enjoyed the paddle and looking forward to kind of discussing in a little bit more depth.
Yeah, it was really refreshing, obviously, to see pairs that you wouldn't normally see go into really deep runs in these tournaments. Obviously, as well, I think quite refreshing to see a new player or new players lift a title. It was obviously Stupa and Yanguas who got their first trophy. Once again, Stupa winning with his partner. I mean, he really has won with everyone that he's played. Now, granted, as you did mention, Hugo, none of the other big dogs or the top players were at that tournament. So, it was kind of expected, but we had seen them, at the start, especially of the partnership, not produce and lose in moments where you would have expected them to win, especially in that Finland P2 where they kind of got knocked out early. So, in a way, it's like they were expected to win, but at the same time, they did answer the call. They did meet the expectations. And maybe let me start by asking you, Hugo, kind of what do you make of this victory? Do you think it's something? Do you think it's nothing? Do you give it a lot of weight, given that, none of the top players were there, or kind of, just what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's definitely a big win for the partnership, and it's going to give them a lot of confidence because even though they went in as the big favourites, a lot of the other, there were a lot of other very good pairs ranked, kind of the 6th seeds, 7th seeds in the overall rankings. I'm talking about Coki and Jon Sanz, who've already won a tournament this season earlier on. We obviously also had Javi, Garrido and Bergamini, who are a great partnership as well, and one of the top 10 ranked pairs overall. Libaak, Bela, obviously not having the best of times, but actually had a very good week, and I'm sure we'll talk about them briefly later on. And obviously a number of other partnerships. I mean, Momo and Edu, who've been on a great run of form recently, and again, they're ranked 7th or 8th overall. So a lot of top pairs, and I think it'd be harsh not to give them credit for winning the tournament. Also, let's not forget they did not drop a set, which is a big statement, I think, at least. It means they were very, very dominant. And being the top seeds obviously puts a lot of pressure on yourself. So I think they dealt very well with that pressure. And I mean, I think once again, at least in my eyes, Yanguas was a leader in the partnership. I think both from an attacking and a defensive partnership, from a defensive point of view, sorry, I think he's kind of the X factor in their current partnership. I think he generates so many winners by getting close to the net, uptight, creating that por cuatro, given that he's so tall, and just defensively, he's so nimble around the court. Taking into account that he's a really big guy, it's really surprising, and I can't kind of get over it. And then Stupa, I think he showed a big improvement from recent weeks. I think he also pulled a lot of the weight. And I mean, defensively, he's just so quick. He's so happy to kind of play that slow paddle, bandeja, volea, then go back, then play the chiquita. I mean, he's one of the fittest players on tour. And I think given that the courts and the conditions in Egypt were quite slow and that smashing wasn't really the way to go about things, that I think benefited him. And I think he read the kind of game style and the way they had to play perfectly. So, I mean, all in all, I think they just worked very well in sync, and that's probably what led them to the win. So, I mean, thinking maybe about last week's episode where we spoke about whether we think pairs are going to stick or split. We talked about the main kind of the top pairs, and obviously I shared my view and thoughts on the fact that I thought last week that Stupa and Yanguas will be splitting at the end of the season. This slightly does change it in a way because they've won and that's going to give them a lot of confidence. However, I think my reasoning last week was more based on the fact that I think the other top pairs are going to look to change things up because everyone's going to try and basically break the dominance of Coki and Tapia, or even Coki and Tapia and Chingoto Galan, who've obviously been in that equation very much. So that's really why I think that there's still going to be a big potential for the partnership and for Stupa and Yanguas to look elsewhere. However, what I would say is I do now struggle to think whether Yanguas has that many other better options beyond Stupa. I think the only real option that would improve, well, that he would probably say, yes, he's a better partner, is Galan. And whether Galan splits from Chingoto, given how good a season they've had this season, is a whole different kettle of fish. And yeah, I'd say it's quite unlikely. So it has slightly changed my view and my perspective on their partnership. But I think we still have to take into account that none of the other big guys, Lebron Dineno, Paquito Cardona, who obviously their closest challengers, were playing this week. So I think we do have to take it with a pinch of salt. Don't know what you think, Gons.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big win. Obviously, I think when you do wear that number one seed tag and you're going as the favorite, it's kind of an added pressure. And at the end of the day, you can only play what's in front of you, right? You don't design the draw yourself. You don't know you don't decide who's going to turn out that day or not. So at the end of the day, they can just play the players that are in front of them. And they won comfortably, as you said. Didn't drop a set across the whole tournament. So quite a dominant display. Now, for me, in terms of what does this mean for the partnership in the future, we did talk about this last week. I was banking on them to win this tournament. I thought this was a perfect tournament for them. And I do think that this will give them kind of the confidence to at least continue. Obviously, I definitely get your point, and it is very true. Like, for example, if Galan and Chingo split for whatever reason, or something crazy happens and Coki and Tapia splits as well, I mean, then everything's on the table, right? I mean, and Yanguas is definitely right now, as a right-sided player, I guess one of the most, or will be one of the most kind of sought after assets, like players. I mean, he's got an unbelievable potential He's already got also like quite a decent amount of points. Like he's very well established in the ranking. So I think if those top players split, he could be a really interesting option for them. And then obviously, I mean, I wouldn't blame him at all, right? To move on from Stupa to go with potentially Galan or even Tapia. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. And I do think now that this win is kind of solidifies them, right? And they've been playing really well, especially the last two tournaments in the French major as well. I think something that you kind of alluded to that I really liked about them, especially this tournament, is how they adapted to the conditions, right? It was a very slow court, sorry. It was outdoor, so not the best conditions, probably not the best in terms of, the smashing game and all of that, because, sometimes the ball moves with the wind and everything. It's not the cleanest way of playing, but they were able to adapt so well, because when we saw them in the French Open, for example, especially against Coki and Tapia in that semifinal, they were so aggressive, right? Yanguas especially was smashing so much. Stupa was also smashing quite a bit. Yanguas got really tight to the net. But in this time, at least in the final, they were a bit more calm, right? They were playing so many lobs. They were very comfortable taking the point to very long, deep stages, many shots, and kind of just letting like the game go on. And let's say to Bergamini to maybe play like an extra lob that maybe potentially then fell a bit short and they could take advantage of, or to Garrido as well. So I kind of really like that. I really like that they were able to adjust their game quite a bit based on the conditions, and it clearly paid off. Now, I do kind of want to speak about as well, maybe Garrido and Berga. And also thinking about like last episode, I think it's quite a good opportunity now to go into these pairs, and we've got updated information, so we can kind of like I guess double down or maybe like backtrack what we said a bit. But I mean, to me, it was like, I think it's very clear that Garrido is just on a completely different level to Bergamini right now. And even from a points perspective, I mean, Berga, I think, is ranked 20th, Garrido is ranked 9th. So I just think that Garrido, when there's someone better available, like he's going to take a chance, because I was really like pleased to like his level. I mean, I thought in the final even as well, like he was so good. He's the one that kept him alive. I mean, he was the only one that could really smash, and he won so many points with this smash out of the four players. And even like, to be honest, Yanguas, I mean, probably still quite too soon. But the other player, apart from Stupa apart from Galan and Tapia, obviously, I do think that Garrido would be, we've spoken about this, right? Like, why do they split? And I think like he's a really good level as well, that him and Yanguas again could be a very, very interesting pair. Obviously, we have seen them and they have been successful. But how realistic is it? Probably not very realistic, given they just split not so long ago. But in any case, in terms of Garrido thought incredible tournament, even as well in the semi-final against Coki and Jon. He had something like 36 winners and 10 unforced errors, which is, I mean, ridiculous. So yeah, great tournament from him. And for example, with his partnership, I do think that he'll be looking for someone a little bit better.
Yeah, I agree. I think Garrido is that step ahead and step above Berga. I mean, Berga's a sensational player, and well, he's ranked 20th in the world, so he's obviously a top prospect on that forehand side of the court. And I do love watching him play because he's so consistent, and I think he has a lot of attributes in his game that potentially we don't realize that are very, very good and, well, kind of damage the opposition a lot. I mean, he's so comfortable to just play lob after lob after lob and transition to the back, from the front to the back of the court constantly. And he just doesn't get tired, it seems like. He's a bit like Tingoto in that sense. So I do think he's a fantastic player. It's just, I think Garrido right now he can challenge the top guys. I think he can. I mean, obviously I wouldn't back him in a head-to-head against Galan or Tapia in that cross-court battle, but against Lebron and against Paquito and against Stupa, I definitely think that he can challenge them. And maybe out of 10 times, maybe he won't win more than half, but I'd say he can push to try to win at least half of the times. So he needs someone next to him that can, well, that can do that as well. And I mean, I totally agree. I think he's going to look elsewhere. Potentially, if Momo and Edu don't continue, I think, as you said, Edu Alonso is a top prospect on the forehand side of the court. I think he's got a bit more to his game when you compare him to Bergamini, particularly from an attacking standpoint. I think he's actually got a surprisingly good smash, and he's been working on it a lot. And his volleys are just a little bit deeper, um, a little bit more powerful than Bergamini's, at least right now. So I think he could be a very interesting option. And well, without a doubt, I think Yanguas Garrido will happen again at some point because they just work so well. And we was obviously very surprised when they split. It's just that I don't think, well, it's obvious that Yanguas would never say, hey, I want to go back with Garrido straight away. It would just be like putting his hand up and saying, yeah, I made a mistake. So I don't really see that. But yeah, overall, I very much agree. I do think Bergamini and Garrido had a great week. And hey, who knows what would have happened if they'd won that tiebreak in the second set in the final. So it was a very, very even final. But it just always felt like Stupa and Yanguas were a little bit more comfortable in that game. And I mean, yeah, maybe looking at some of the other pairs, maybe looking at the pairs that made the semi-finals, Coki and Jon, once again, they're almost like Mr. Consistency, aren't they? They always reach the round that they have to reach. And they did win a tournament this season. It was one of the tournaments where the top pairs weren't playing. But it just feels like they potentially might not have it in them to beat the real big dogs, and not just Chingalan and Goyon Tapia, but maybe that second tier. I'm talking about the Lebron Dinenos, the Mike Yanguas and Franco Stupaczuk, even the Paquito and Cardona. It just feels like they're a step below them. And obviously last week I shared that I think they'll split between now and the start of next season. And it's literally because of that. In that semi-final against Bela and Garrido, prior to the semi, I would have potentially said that Jon Sanz and Coki and Nieto were favourites based on having played together so much and for so long. And just, I think they're a little bit more balanced in terms of, I think maybe Garrido's currently the best player out of the four, but Bela is probably the worst player out of the four. And so I thought that Jon Sanz and Coki and Nieto were better positioned and probably favourites. Now, they ended up losing that match. It was a 3-setter, but the latter two sets were 6-2, 6-1 or something like that. So very dominant display from Bela and Garrido. Now, I think this is actually going to hurt them quite a lot. And I know Jon Sanz in particular was found out in that game a lot. I think he put his hand up, and actually on social media, he kind of apologized for his level. Obviously, nothing that players have to do. It just happens. It's the nature of the game. But yeah, I have a feeling that they might have to split to aspire to bigger things. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, it's. I mean, they were the second seed, so they were definitely, I think, favored in that match, right? I mean, they should have reached the final if you go, based on seed ranking. So they did lose to a really good pair. We just talked about them. Garrido, I thought, especially. I mean, to me, could even arguably, individually, at least, I thought maybe even the best player of the tournament, to be honest. But it does feel like, as you said, there's a ceiling to their game. And it's a bit of a shame, though, because they just suit each other so much. You've got the one that's really aggressive, so left-handed, Jon Sanz, and then Coki and Nieto, who's a bit more defensive, picking up more of the volume of the game and committing less unforced errors, less risky shots. So that kind of balances really nicely with Jon Sanz, who takes a lot of risks. And as you mentioned, he was kind of the one that it was one of those games where, a very classic Jon Sanz game where he starts to take too many risks. In the long points, he then wants to finish them really quick and potentially doesn't select the right shot and just wants to end the point and then gets found out. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I mean, in Bordeaux, for example, in the final, if I'm not mistaken, he was unbelievable. Yeah. Just taking those risky shots and putting kind of the weight of the pair on his shoulders. But there's just that element to his game, right? Where if you have him on a good day, they can really challenge anyone. Barcoy and Tapia probably, or even Tingoton Galan, but they can really be up there. And on a bad day, things like this happen. So now I did think that they were going to stick, obviously last week, and yeah, I think it's tough because I just wonder who they can pair up with that kind of can take them to the next level. So that's kind of where I'm like, would they really, split? I don't know, like Jon Sanz. I don't know if, for example, Momo and Edu, like, could he be interested in playing with Momo, but kind of similar with Coki Nieto? If Paquito, maybe Paquito and Cardona split, it could be really interesting actually. Coki going to very similar pairing Jon Sanz. So, for example, with Cardona and obviously Jon Sanz, I would say probably taking quite a big step ahead with someone like Paquito. But I don't know, is Paquito maybe the player, like would Paquito need someone like Jon Sanz? So I just have a bit of doubts there, because I think those are the kind of players that they would be targeted to, right? I don't think they're ready for example, if LeBron and Dineno split, I'm not sure that kind of LeBron and Dineno are going to be calling Coki and Jon first. I don't think so, at least. So that's kind of my question. But at the same time, you have a very good point in terms of like their game and the ceiling, and they've probably reached it, right? And they probably do need an extra push or maybe a bit of a change if they do want to kind of challenge even more. So yeah, I'd say that if things get shaken up, I mean, I would definitely wouldn't be surprised if they do kind of want to switch.
Yeah, I think it is true that when you think about both players and their perspectives, if they switch, and we did talk about this last week, so I don't want to delve too deep into it, but I think Jon Sanz has a lot of potential better options, because I think that partnership with Paquito can very much happen based on, well, Jon Sanz and Pablo Cardona are obviously very different players, but they're both lefties, they're both aggressive, they're both quite young, so Paquito could say, hey, yeah, let's give Jon Sanz an opportunity. And then there's also other backhand players, well, maybe Momo Gonzalez, although I don't think he'd be a massive improvement compared to Coki Nieto. I think actually Coki Nieto might probably be playing better than Momo Gonzalez right now. But he has Momo Gonzalez. He'd maybe even have Garrido, Jon Sanz Garrido. I wouldn't really see that partnership working that much. Maybe they're too similar, both too aggressive. But he basically, what I'm saying is, he has a lot of top prospects on the backhand. Now, Coki Nieto, he needs an attacking forehand, I think, in my eyes, to really challenge the top pairs, because he doesn't generate that many winners. And there's just not that many, because I don't think Yanguas would look at Coki Nieto. And you think about the other ones, Dineno right now, he's with LeBron. He's not going to look at Coki Nieto. And also, he's not that aggressive.
Yeah, it wouldn't work.
Exactly. And yes, maybe Cardona. Okay, but is Cardona an improvement when you compare him to Jon Sanz? I'm not sure. And so when you think about the other options, again, we were talking about Edu Alonso being a top prospect, but he's not super aggressive. He's more aggressive than other forehands, but he's not super aggressive. So I think Coki Nieto is in a bit of a pickle individually. I don't think he has that many top options. Potentially, we might see him moving to the forehand side. I mean, he's alluded to it in some interviews, it's the fact that he said he might want to try it. And I think actually if a top dog on the backhand kind of, well, tested him and said, hey, should we give it a go? Actually, I think Coki Nieto, Javi Garrido would be a hell of a partnership with Coki Nieto on the forehand. But obviously, it's a big ask to change sides when you play your whole life on the backhand side of the court and you change the whole game. I just wanted to basically highlight that I think Jon Sanz has a lot more options than Coki Nieto. So
it's a really good point. And maybe we do forget that Ale Galan did play with Jon Sanz and he did choose Jon Sanz to be his partner when LeBron had that, was off for a long time due to his injury last year. So, I mean, it's just really, he is probably he is a very good player. And obviously, I'm sure the top players do kind of appreciate how good he is. He played with Galan, and they did actually, they did. If I'm not mistaken, they reached the final. They were there. They were contending. So yeah. I mean, he, as you said, there's definitely a lot more options for for a forehand attacking player to find a partner on the backhand than there is a backhand kind of defensive player to find someone on the forehand. That I completely agree with you. On the point around Coki and Nieto potentially switching sides, like, yes, but at the same time, for example, we did see it with Momo. And we also thought that, like, due to his playing style and his attributes, like, it would really work out, and it didn't work out at all. So I think there's potentially not a misconception, but we maybe actually underrate how hard it is to play on both sides at the level that you need to play. You know, when you're playing like the top, like the best players in the world, and how much actually the differences make. So you know, maybe there's only a handful of players that can do that effectively, and LeBron being one of them, clearly one of the best players in the history of the game. So yeah, I just wonder if, you know, that would actually work as well. I would like to see it, because obviously based on his attributes, he does seem like he would fit quite well on the forehand, but I'm not sure how quickly, for example, he could adjust to have results, because at the end of the day, it's a results-based game. You know, players just want to get results really quick, and if it doesn't come in like quick enough, then they just might be like, okay, this is really worth it.
Agreed. But actually, funnily enough, having said this, I've just thought of two very interesting options for Coki and Jon, just here live as it goes. And I was thinking, what aggressive forehands are there out there? And I thought Chozas and also Libaak. I actually, funnily enough, I think if they split, both of them could be top options for Coki and Jon. Probably the top options based on the type of game style that he has. But yeah, maybe we should move on to some other pairs. And I mean, maybe Momo and Edu, who obviously made the semi-finals. They made the other semi-final, and they did kind of get thumped by Yanguas and Stupa. It was 6-2, 6-2. And it is true that throughout the match, they did have quite a few chances to break, and the games were very even. It just felt that they always ended up, well, going Stupa and Yanguas' way. So maybe on a different day, it would have gone a different way. I think they were very affected by the fact that they played for so many weeks in a row. I mean, Gons, you and I have spoken about it. They played all the FIPS, and they've gone really deep into them, and they're now playing this. So they must be absolutely knackered. So I'm sure that affected them. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the sticker split, I think we both said split. I don't think this week changes it that much. I think they achieved what they expected to achieve. They made the semi-finals, and they lost to the winners and the favourites. So I think things remain the same for them.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's crazy how many 3-set matches they've played. I guess you can kind of see it, you know, both sides. I guess on the positive side, like, you know, they're very hard to beat. They're always there. They'll put up a fight. They won't give up. And then on the maybe more negative, they're probably thinking like, gosh, can we just finish the points more quickly, and can we get over with it? Especially, as you said, because they've been playing for so many weeks now. I mean, they must have been absolutely dead. But fair play to them. Made the semifinals, fourth seeded in the tournament. So, I mean, that was kind of the expectation, and they did end up losing to the better pair in any case, and the winners of the tournament. So no shame in that. I do still think that, whilst probably doesn't change how they're feeling, I still think that I see them more likely to split, just simply because Edu Alonso is clearly becoming a really solid player on tour. I think he's definitely stepped up. I think even the second half of the season, probably with the partnership with Momo, has done him so well. But even at the start as well, he was kind of rising with Arroyo, and I think he's going to be a really sought after player when the, you know, at the beginning of next year, and he probably wants to be with a more attacking option, I would say, or a more offensive player that can probably finish the points quicker. So, I mean, someone like Garrido, I think, would fit him really, really well. I would really like that partnership.
100%. I think Edu Alonso's game style matches with someone who's super aggressive. I mean, that's why he was doing so well with Arroyo, right? When they were playing together, it was just perfect. So I think, yeah, Garrido's a perfect example. I mean, I think Paquito is a good option as well, based on the fact that he's still playing at an unbelievable level and he can be super aggressive. Maybe he's not as aggressive as other players, but I think the fact that he's Paquito would probably make up for that. And I mean, who knows? There's obviously a few other options, but yeah, I agree. I think he needs a more attacking player, and I think Momo Gonzalez does as well. So
Yeah.
I don't know where Momo Gonzalez might look. It might actually be Jon Sanz, to be honest. I'd very much see that partnership happening, and I think it could work. So two very different characters, aren't they? But I think it could actually work quite well. So yeah, I mean, I think we probably covered the main pairs. Maybe just a quick mention: Libaak and Bela obviously made the quarterfinals. They beat Chozas and Ausburger. Now, I was very surprised about that and a very dominant display. So great to see Bela kind of winning, still winning, given that he's 44 or 45 and he's just about to retire. And he basically beat two of the hottest prospects in Chozas and Ausburger. So yeah, credit where credit's due. And it was great to see that.
Yeah, I mean, it was that little kind of revenge game after not being called up for the World Cup and beating two players who are going with the Argentinian squad. I mean, I'm sure that felt quite nice for Bela. And yeah, I mean, incredible to see. Also, just quickly mention on Libaak. I mean, I thought he was outstanding as well. He was really aggressive, and you can kind of see him coming along nicely. I still think that in terms of like the prospects, when we look at the right side of players, he's probably not quite there yet in terms of like really being able to challenge consistently the top 10, but I think he's kind of quickly going there. I think next year will be kind of the year that we've seen, for example, from Edu Alonso have. I think he's going to start making these kind of rounds even more frequently. So yeah, I mean, really good tournament from both of them. And hopefully they manage to get a couple wins like this at least, so Bela can have a really nice ending to obviously what has been the greatest career in the history of paddle.
Yeah, I don't think there's much doubt about that, to be honest. And yeah, maybe just a quick one on Libaak. I think all he needs is, I think he just needs a father figure next to him. Obviously, Bela's a great example, but he's not at the peak of his game. But I think if he partnered with someone, I mean, obviously Paquita would probably not look at him, but I just think if he had a consistent backhand player that's experienced, I think he can go all the way. I mean, his shots are, when you look at them shot per shot, they're unbelievable. His backhand volley, his biwara, he's got a great smash. So he's got everything in the locker. So I think it's just a matter of time for one of the big guys on the backhand to pick him. And I think he can go very far. I think he can challenge the top positions probably pretty soon.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that probably brings us to the end of the episode. I do hope that everyone has enjoyed that. You know, it's quite nice, quite refreshing to talk about all the players that are not named. So yeah, Hugo, as always, it's been a pleasure. And everyone, please do leave a like and subscribe. Leave us a comment as well with your thoughts. What do you think about these partnerships, and how do you see them ahead of the, towards the end of the year and ahead of the new season? But yeah, Hugo, it's been a pleasure as always, and we'll catch you next time.
Cheers, guys. Have a great week.